Hello Year 6 and welcome to Monday's maths lesson. Now for today's maths lesson you are going to need this book. Take a really good look. It's the one that was delivered in our bubble closure. Okay, so not the one you've just had delivered, it's the one we had before. So make sure you are in the right book. Now you are needing pages 18 and 19. Okay, and that's the title is Estimating. We're going to be using rounding to estimate. Now rounding is something that we have done before, but I'm going to go through all the rules with you to remind you because it's sometimes hard to remember. So your first bit, you've got to round to the nearest 100, okay? So this is the first number, so I'm going through the first one with you. So you've got 24,301. Now we're rounding to the nearest 100, so we need the hundreds column. Okay, so I need the hundreds column, but I also need, when I'm rounding, the next column as well. So these are the two columns that I'm going to be looking at, the hundreds and the tens. Now my first job is to work out which two numbers it's lying in between. So it's lying in between 24,300, that's my first 100, this one, and then 24,000, and then the next 100. So if I was counting in hundreds, 100, 200, 300, 400 would be the next 100. Now, that's when this column comes in. Okay, so we now need the tens. So this column is really important to decide whether I go up to 400 or down to 300. So the rules for rounding them. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, we round down. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, we round up. Okay? So when I look in the tens column, it's a 0. So that means that I've got to round down. Okay, so I'm going down to 24,300. Okay, so your first section is just rounding to 100. Now the next section, you've got lots and lots of rounding to do. You've got a table, okay, here. So here's your table, and you've got numbers down this side here, and then you've got to round them to the nearest 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000 and the nearest 100,000. Okay, so the first one I'm going to go through with you. So you've got 702,128 is your first number. So when I'm rounding to the nearest 10, I need the tens column and then the one next door. So again, first job, work out which numbers it's in between. So it's in between 702,120, that's my first 10. And then the second 10, so 702,100. And then if I was counting in tens, 10, 20, 30 would be the next 100. Okay, then I go to my ones column and it's an 8. So remember the rules for rounding. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, we go down. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, we go up. So because it's an 8, I'm going to go up to the next 10. Okay, so the next one then would be rounding to the nearest 100, which we have just been through, but we'll go through it again. Okay, so for the hundreds then, I need the hundreds column and the tens column. So this then would be 702,000, and then the first 100 is this 100. And then the next one, 702,000, and then again, the next 100, if I was counting in hundreds, 100, 200. Okay, right, so now I go to the next column, the tens column, it's a 2. So rules for rounding, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, we go down. So it's a 2 in the tens column, so I'm going down to 702,100. Okay, right, next column then is the thousands column. Okay, so I've got a 2 in my thousands column, so I need the thousands column and I need the hundreds column this time, the next door one. So I've got 702,000 and then 700, and so it'd be 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. So 703,000. Okay, so my number is somewhere in between those thousands. So I go next door and it's a 1. So the rules for rounding, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, we go down. So I'm going to go down to 702,000. Okay? Right, the next one then is rounding to the nearest 10,000. So here's my 10,000s column. Okay, and then I've got to use my thousands column as well. So it's somewhere in between 700,000 and 71, so 710,000. Okay, so it's somewhere in between those two. Okay, so I'll go next door, it's a 2, so 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4, we round down to 700,000. Okay, and then finally to the nearest 100,000, so it's a 7, and then I need next door as well, the 0. Okay, so I've got 700,000, and then the next 100,000 would be 800,000. Okay, so then I go next door, it's a 0, and 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4 are round down. Okay, so it is lots to think about in rounding, but remember those rules. Okay, so if you're rounding to the nearest 1,000, you need to look at the thousands column and the one next door. If you're rounding to the nearest 10,000, you need to look at the 10,000s column and the one next door. And then the golden rule, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, you round up. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you round down. Okay, it is a little bit tricky, just do your best. Then on the next one, then you've got some numbers that have already been rounded, and you've got to work out which of these numbers would be rounded to that number. So you could round them all if that would help you, and then you'd find out which one it is. And then the bottom one, use rounding to check whether these calculations are correct. Put a cross through the ones that you think are wrong. Okay, so round them. So round each of the numbers and work out which ones are the correct and incorrect ones. Now the next page then, so I want you to do 19 as well. So you start with rounding to the nearest 1,000. Okay, so make sure, so we'll go through one again for rounding to the nearest 1,000. So the first one is 603,504. So for rounding to the nearest 1,000, we need the thousands column and we need the hundreds column. So do the two numbers it is in between. So 603,000, and then the next 1,000 would be 604,000, because if we were counting in thousands, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. Okay, then go next door, it's a 5. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, we round up to 604,000. Okay? Then the next ones, the last two, are not using rounding to estimate, they are using the inverse. Okay, so you've been asked on these, so it's just about switching around the numbers. So you've got the three numbers and it's about switching them around. So for example, the first one is 97 times by 3. Now the inverse, as you all know, of multiplication is division. So you've got 97 times by 3 is 291. And it's asking you to write a different calculation that you could use to check that that's right. So I could, if I wanted to use division as my inverse, start with the 291 because that's the biggest number. Divide it by either 97 or 3. So divided by 3 is 97. Okay, so a calculation that you could use to check them using the inverse. So it's just about moving the numbers around and checking that it would make sense. And then on the last one, you've got to write an inverse calculation to check these ones and put a tick in the box if you agree with the answer. So very similar to this one, but then you've got to think, would that be right, by using the inverse? Okay, now as always, we are always there on the other end of the Year 6 email to help you. So email us if you are struggling. But other than that, I'll see you tomorrow for tomorrow's math lesson.